Oh,
Okay.
looks like we're live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of The Bottom Line. And tonight, my guest is attorney Eric Harden, who some of you may know as the attorney, the brother who's an attorney of the gentleman that was uh, in his apartment, and police showed up, and some type of a scuffle or disagreement happened, and he ended up being shot by one of two police officers. I'm going to let him tell you everything about what happened from the minute police got there to where we are today with the case. His brother has been buried, and we're going to find out everything that is rumor and wrong, and we're going to get it right from the source. So, welcome. Thank you for coming in, Eric.
Well, yes, yeah. So it's Eric Mack, but that's
Oh,
that's
why did I keep calling you Harden? Oh, because of your brother.
my brother's name's Anthony Harding, but that's a longer story for another day.
Yeah, long shot.
Well, thank you for having me, Gene. And I just want to make sure people know, like, my brother was shot actually in his bedroom at the foot of his bed, rather just in his apartment somewhere. So,
Okay, yeah. Well, that's why
uh,
you're here.
yeah. So, I, I usually don't discuss the actual facts of the shooting because there is ongoing sort of discussion about that, and as we've seen relatively recently, sometimes things go missing uh, when they're sort of teed up in terms of their relevance and importance in a case. So I usually refrain from talking about the specific facts of what we're looking at and things like that, but. I will say that my brother was shot on Monday, which was November 22nd of 2021, and I think on Wednesday. So I'll tell you about the case. That might be
Sure.
the easiest way to go.
Yeah,
You can
go
ask
with it.
questions. So
Go with it.
on Wednesday, we filed we sent a document to the Fall River Police Department telling them it was basically a retention letter. Don't destroy anything related to this case, to the shooting. Keep all of the records, all of the phone logs, everything. So that happened within 48 hours of the actual shooting. And at that point in time, we were waiting for the district attorney to issue his findings. And to give you a little bit, when my brother was shot, actually went to the police station, and they hadn't informed me or my family what had happened, and they interviewed us. And I think some of the questions were somewhat unfair without disclosing the fact that my brother had been shot and he was actually dead at the time.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
and I actually want those interviews. For me, I really want to see the interviews that took place the actual night of the incident, including the interviews of the police officers themselves. So while the district attorney has said that they've provided us information, they really haven't provided us anything sort of significant in terms of what the evidence is.
Okay.
So,
So
but
basically, when the district attorney made a public statement about he's released all the facts, you are saying that that's not the case.
that's not the case at all. And actually, to be fair, what he did was he released everything from an incident that happened to my brother 2 years ago and released very, very, very little information about the actual incident where my brother died. And he tried to distort it to sort of overload what was distributed and say, look, we sent out all the stuff. And I was like, yeah, but where's the stuff from the actual incident? And if you look very closely at what he produced almost nothing related to the incident. There's not a single interview in there from when my brother was actually shot. And that's very concerning to me. And I think that was intentional and deliberate. From their standpoint, their best sort of argument, so to speak, is to go back to what happened to my brother 2 years ago and paint him as a bad guy and not focus on his shooting, which is a totally separate incident. And that's what they're trying to do in order to say it was
Okay.
justified.
So do you think? So if I'm reading you right, and it sounds to me like the information they released was something that really didn't have uh, a lot to do with your brother, more to do with his past, and by releasing that, they taint any new information that comes out.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And they produce all this information from an incident that happened 2 years ago, and almost nothing from what happened actually. And no, this November 22nd when he was shot and killed. And I think that was intentional and deliberate on the part. So, and after, they released, after they just found that the shooting was justified, we sent the public records request to them saying, all right, the investigation is concluded. Give us all the public records. And they responded by saying, no, we're not going to give you any public records. We're still investigating. Even though we've cleared the officers and we're not going to interview anybody, we're still investigating. And it was at that point I said, you're just going to file a lawsuit because I didn't want to have to go to this dance again with them.
Let me ask you at
you
this
were entitled
point.
to.
All right, let me ask
Yep.
you at this point, because some
Yep.
people got confused right here. So he's telling you that you can't get actually information you're entitled to, right?
Yep.
And we should say that if an investigation is going on, then he has grounds to hold stuff. But he could have released certain stuff with redactions, right?
So
Right.
there is no, the district attorney can't say there's an ongoing investigation, so you don't get anything, right? Which is what they were trying to do. What the law says is if there's an ongoing investigation, you need to take out what information that will sort of taint the investigation if it's given to you right now. So what they're
Okay.
supposed to do is give you a log of everything. Say, all right, we can give you these things. We can't give you these things, and here's why. And so
Oh,
all
I
they
see.
did was says we can't give you anything. Yeah.
I see.
And which is just a complete violation of the law. Which is why I was like, I'm just not going to do this because you're blatantly violating the law. And that's why we filed the lawsuit to get everything that we were entitled to at that point in time. So, and
So
does that
so when
answer
you-
your question? Sure.
Yeah. So when you tell him that you're going to file a lawsuit, does he try to work with you so you don't file a lawsuit, or does he not
No.
care at that point?
You know, I don't. Well, we asked him for the information, and it was after the investigation was concluded. Although he tried to say, "Well, it's concluded, but it's not really concluded," which was trying to be cute, in my opinion. Like you've cleared the officers, you're not interviewing anybody. The only thing I can see that you haven't done is you can't access a cell phone, and you're waiting on the toxicology reports, which are really irrelevant. So we asked him for the information. He said no, and then I filed a lawsuit. At that point in time, he could have came to me and said, "Look, we'll work with you," but rather than that, they filed a motion to dismiss, which was completely baseless. And at that point, I don't know, probably last Thursday, we get to the hearing and they withdraw they withdrew the motion to dismiss because
Right.
it was clearly there was no basis for it.
He didn't want to have the judge rule against him. In other words, right?
It was a complete effort to save face, right? To say, well, I didn't lose because I quit before it really started, right?
Oh, I
We get to the
you.
hearing. Yeah, we get to the hearing. The judge comes on, starts asking questions about this is not appropriate, and then he just says we withdraw it. Now they're going to try to say, well, we give him stuff, blah 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 blah. That's what happened. Any other thing? I see something from a
There's a question
Joe
for you.
Camp. How long can they keep it? They can keep an investigation as long as they want. So they could say we're investigating, but we're not telling you what we're doing or when we're going to be done, right? They never said like we're investigating. We'll give it to you next week. Literally, there was like we're investigating. We have no idea when we're going to be done. And I was like, this is just a game that they're playing here, right? Like you're not. And by the way, what are you investigating, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
This was a 2.5 minute incident. You interviewed everybody within like probably 48 hours or whatever the case may be. What is there that you're doing? And they never said what they were doing as part of their investigation. They just said, we're investigating. We have no idea when they're going to be done. And in my mind, that's just a game that they're going to play until they can, and do it as long as they can get away with it. And that's why I immediately just filed a lawsuit because I didn't want to keep asking them and going back and all that kind of stuff. So,
Okay. So
right.
there is a lawsuit pending.
There's a lawsuit pending, and to be clear, the lawsuit's not for money. It's just for the records, right? It's just for the public records. And to clarify, like I'm not an autopsy is not a public record, report because it's for the next of kin, who's his wife, right?
Yeah.
She's requested that. They refused to give her the autopsy report.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they refused to give her his cell phone back. And in my opinion, like if you're done with the investigation, we should be able to get all of the information that we need to take a look at. So this is just to get all the public records. There is going to be another hearing, which is June 22nd, I believe. And in the interim, they're supposed to work with us and try to produce certain information. And it's one thing is I'll believe it when I see it, right? And I think they're probably going to give me something, but they're not going to give me everything. That's my guess of what they're going to do. And I think we're going to be litigating over a narrow scope of information. The Rafael Ruiz Beretta family, that happened in 2017, 5 years ago.
Okay.
I don't think that they've even seen the interviews with the police officers yet.
Now, are we talking
Do you know
about
what I
the Raphael case? That's the kid from New Bedford and was shot in his car?
Yes, that's what we're
Okay.
talking about. Sorry.
Okay, Airport
Yeah,
Road, right?
that happened in 2017. And to my understanding, the family still hasn't seen the interviews with the police officers or anything like that. So this will go on as long as you allow it to go on with this district attorney's office, because they will hold things, they will make excuses, they will delay as long as possible so that they're able to get their version of the truth out there and hold up the other side from telling, well, here's what we think happened based upon all the evidence. One side literally has all of the evidence, refusing to give it to the family, and then just makes up whatever story they want. And that's not acceptable to me.
Now, let me ask you a question. I've been told a few different times that there was a separate autopsy done by the family.
Yep.
Can you comment on that at all?
I can comment on some of it. I can comment that when people, and I'll tell you that my understanding of a separate autopsy was like, well, it's all done separately and apart from their autopsy. So there's really two separate autopsies. A second autopsy is really an investigation on the first autopsy.
Okay, a review of it.
So it's a review of it. We got all of our information that we think we know what happened, but we don't have their autopsy because they refused to give it to us. So we need theirs to sort of finalize the second one. Although we do have our own pictures, we do have our own sort of thoughts about what happened. We want to take a look at theirs first.
Oh, I see. Okay. So basically, you're kind of, you got all these little pieces, but you're kind of missing, it's like a puzzle, right? You're kind of missing the pieces that connect to it. Being the evidence, the autopsy.
Exactly. So this is one massive litigation. It's one massive puzzle which you're trying to put together to piece together what happened. And what's unfair is that only one side has all of the pieces to the puzzle. And then they tell everybody, well, here's what the puzzle is. And I will say that in my experience, what they say is not accurate. The actual physical evidence usually does not lead to the conclusion that they're saying. That has been my experience. And by the way, that has been what I've seen so far from what I've seen, the evidence. What I've seen so far doesn't equate with what they're saying happened.
Okay, so you think there's more to the story, and that's why you need the reports and everything so that you and your team can look at everything and draw a conclusion?
Yes. And, I'm always reluctant to talk about the specific facts of the lawsuit because if you sort of give somebody a roadmap to what you're thinking, things go missing. And I don't know if you saw the missing police log that was sort of on Channel 12.
Absolutely.
That was completely predictable that would go missing. And to know why and I'll explain to know why that went missing, you'd have to read the report on Robillard. So there was a 39, to give people a background or the people listening, there was a 39-page report that was issued regarding Joshua Robillard, who was caught with drugs in his desk, and that were not connected to any actual criminal activity. So that he has all these drugs, and not only does he have drugs in his desk, but he also has what they call drug slips. So you take the slips and you connect them to the drugs, attach them, and you give it to the clerk for courts to get a search warrant, right? So he's being investigated, and he tells him, well, I got all these slips and I got all these drugs. So immediately the investigator is like, well, are you just like making up, the information you're giving to the magistrate? And he's like, no, I'm not doing that. But when you read that, when I first read it, I was like, well, isn't there something that's tracking who's given to the courts in the time period? And that's what missing was the drug log. And if you read the report, you would be like, that's the missing link that would have sent him to jail. So it's not an accident that went missing. Somebody did that to keep him out of jail. I don't know whether it was him. I don't know if it's another police officer, but this isn't just a random document to go missing. It was exactly predictable if you read that report.
Right.
So,
Because the date it went missing is a little skeptical too, isn't it? Like a few days after this
yes.
whole incident happened.
We don't, to my knowledge, I have no idea when it went missing. But the fact that when you read that report, it's pretty clear that if somebody was tracking when he was submitting the drugs to the magistrate, you could look back to see if he was sort of manipulating the timeline. With the drug log on, that's the piece of evidence that I think you needed to sort of see if he was making things up.
Okay, I see.
So
all right. That, although that's not tied directly to your brother's case,
no.
The purpose is to show that something's not right.
The purpose is to show that I'm reluctant to say, like, here's what I think, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
Right.
Because one of the pieces to that puzzle might just go missing. That's the purpose of what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. So it's really difficult to say everything you want to say because you could be showing your hand. And as a result, your fear is that something you need maybe not be there when you need it.
Exactly. And my fear is reasonable, I think. You know what I mean? One side has all the evidence and you don't really know what that is. And, from day one, they were supposed to provide us with a list of every single aspect of evidence they had, and they still haven't given it to us yet. And that's sort of like the real baseline of the public records law. It's like, here's everything we have. Here's what we can give you. Here's what we can't give you and why. They still haven't done that yet.
Right. Now, do we know, is there a, they say the investigation is still going on. And
they've said that it's concluded. They've said it's concluded as of about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, when you went to court, all of a sudden it was concluded.
The Friday before I went to court, it was concluded. But yes, you see, okay. You see how that works, right?
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Is there another comment coming up?
Sure.
You can see it.
Well, he's only saying that because that's what they said. Like Mike Regan, like you're literally just repeating what the DA said. And if I tell you to go back and look at what the DA said, the DA said something completely different the actual night of the incident. So go back and look at what the DA said the night of the incident, and it'll give you a different feel. And actually go back and look at the search warrant that was produced. That's also not what's in the search warrant. So the idea that they can just say something happened and then it happened is not true. And by the way, they've said 3 different things. I invite Mike Regan to go back and look exactly what the DA said the night of the incident.
Right. So. Right. Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear, right, that like in most cases like this, there's a city divide, right? You're going to have people that, the police wouldn't do something wrong and stuff, that type of, and they're not willing to listen to the rest of the evidence. And then these people that are probably on your side that say police are always wrong. So I think what you're saying is we don't know. We just want to know.
To make say, well, police lie, police don't lie, police are good, police are bad. Yeah. It hasn't been my experience that, I'll tell you, my experience right now isn't that like all police are bad. What I've really seen is a lack of attention to detail, people that are not really good at their jobs, people that are making mistakes. That has been my experience when I'm dealing with them this far. And then when they get caught doing that, then they make up something after the fact. So that has been what I've seen so far. And to give you one more thing, as I think you've seen, like, Tom Quinn didn't bother to disclose the fact that the police officer involved was the best friend from his son from kindergarten through college. Just never
Now,
mentioned it.
all right, let's step back a second because that was pretty quick. So you're
Yep.
saying, okay, the police officer that was involved in the shooting?
Yep. Not the police officer that made the shots, but the other police officer involved.
Yeah.
He was Tom Quinn. He's Tom Quinn's son's best friend from kindergarten through college, including going to college together, and high school together, playing sports on teams together, and being roommates in college together. And this police officer's sister works in the DA's office. Like, these are things that really people should. First of all, he didn't disclose it, which to me is a problem. When you're an attorney, you're supposed to disclose conflicts of interest. This is a conflict of interest. He didn't disclose it. That's a problem in and of itself. And he should have never even been the one making the decision on this type of thing, given
Yeah,
that
but-
you're supposed
yeah.
you're supposed to recuse yourself.
Yeah.
And these are the things that people, when the DA is allowed to say whatever they want, and then people just believe it, is a problem. Everybody's opinion should be able to be reviewed, look through the information carefully, and decide whether it's correct or not. I don't believe his decision was correct with regard to my brother. I don't believe his decision was correct with regard to the Rafael Ruiz Beretta matter either. You go back and look at what they said the night of that incident, completely different than what they said when the report came out. So there's always the initial statement that they say, which is usually the truth, by the way, and then months later, it's something completely different. So.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you just basically said that the district attorney in charge of the case, his son is best friends with one of the officers involved, and
Yep.
that officer's sister works
Yep.
for the DA.
Works in the DA's office.
Okay.
And he never said anything about it. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah. I had to
You just-
process that again,
Yeah. I mean, like, these are important facts. And it just slips your mind that this guy's sister is next door to you. Like,
Right.
Yeah. By the way, you don't think they said anything to each other?
Right.
You don't think she got the job because her brother's best friends with the police officer, like DA? Like, of course. We live in the real world here, not just a fictitious world where people can make up things when they feel like it.
Right.
So, I'm investigating every aspect of all of this, including the backgrounds of the police officers, including the background of the DA, including all of the facts that happened. I need to know everything. And you can't just tell me, well, this happened, and then close the books and say that you don't get to look at anything else. So that's not the way this works.
Are you prepared? Let me ask you a question that I don't know if anyone's asked you, but are you prepared at the end of this, if the evidence comes out that your brother did what they said, and that they had no alternative to say, okay, after you've done your due diligence?
I will say, well, yes. There are circumstances where police officers should have the ability to shoot and kill somebody. I've never said otherwise, and I recognize that is the case in the circumstances. I will say, when this started, I had no idea what happened, like everybody else, right?
Yeah.
I hadn't seen anything. I don't know what happened. I'm going by what people said. Now, I will say, if you look at the DA's statement, he said there was a knife present in my brother's house when the incident happened. Those are his exact words. What does that mean to you? I would say, gee.
Well, it's an apartment. I hope there's a knife in there.
Okay.
Probably a lot of them.
Does he say he's repeatedly stabbing him in his neck?
No, and it doesn't also say it was in his hand either.
I will say every aspect of evidence I have seen personally leads to that conclusion. That's what I've seen. I haven't seen everything, but that's what I've seen so far.
The conclusion that there wasn't one.
That there was a knife in his apartment.
That's it. That's it. So you can.
That's by the way, which is what the DA said.
Yeah.
I'm not making this up.
Right.
It's what he said. So
Right.
yeah, like I mean, people are just like, well, he said this now, but that's not what he said before. And if you go back and look at the Larry Ruiz Beretta matter, the night of the incident, they said that he was shot, Larry Ruiz Beretta, to stop him from fleeing the scene. So to stop him from basically driving away. You
Yeah.
can't shoot and kill somebody to stop him from driving away. That's illegal.
Right.
2 months later, when the report comes out, or 3 months, all of a sudden he shot this. The officer had to shoot him because he was going to get ran over by the car. To me, there's a pattern of telling the truth initially, and then understanding like the truth could get the officer in trouble. Let's manipulate the story to get the officer out of trouble.
Right.
So
Right.
take a look at what was said the nights of both of those incidents, and you'll see a pattern here.
Well,
You know?
I mean, anytime someone's life is taken, it's unfortunate, regardless of the circumstances, right? And I think the sad part about this that I'm hearing in the community every time I discuss this with people, because people have been like haunting me to get this on the air, right? And I keep telling them, you
Yeah.
got to wait. There's a process, I mean, the guy's only going to be able to say so much. So there were a lot of people interested, and I'll be honest with you, I've spoken to high-ranking police officers about this, and obviously they have their view. And like I've said to everyone, I think uh, I'm just here to produce the people and the evidence and let everybody draw their own conclusions. My opinion doesn't matter at this point while I'm doing this story.
It, and I think that it's important for people to see all of the evidence before they draw their own conclusion. For the DA to come out and say, well, this is what happened, you can't see anything, like that's completely inappropriate and unfair. If you're going to clear us police officers, you got to release every single thing related to the investigation and not release anything. Like I said, Larry Ruiz Beretta was killed 5 years ago. Those interviews have not been produced yet. That's not an accident.
Has the parents asked for them? Do you know?
My understanding is they're currently engaged in litigation and ongoing discovery.
Yeah.
So but I don't think they've seen them.
So the attorneys they're in discovery and they still haven't seen them?
That's my understanding where they are right now.
Wow. That's unusual.
But by the way, there's nothing stopping them from just releasing them. These are public records. If they wanted to, they could say, here's everything.
Yeah. That case is definitely closed, right? It's 4 years old.
It's 5 years old.
5
I think. It'll be 5 years in November.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, it's closed. Like, why not just release all the interviews? So this is the type of thing that I think goes on and people don't really understand. Like, that's why I filed a lawsuit. I was like, I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? I'm not going to wait for 5 years to get the stuff. Just let's get this over with now.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I don't know what you must feel, but just from what I see happening, it's kind of like it's weird. It just doesn't add up. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Here's what I told this police officer.
Yep.
I said that I think what caused 99% of this confusion was that the DA came out and he dropped a little piece of information, which was the officers involved are cleared. But that was it. And then when people asked for reports, they wanted to see people who are entitled to them. It's not, the investigation isn't over. And that started to lead people to believe, well, how did you clear this if the investigation's not over?
He's talking out of both sides of his mouth. Let me make this clear. He wants to clear the cops, but he doesn't want to give me anything. That is what's going on. Let's make that totally clear. And that's why I filed a lawsuit. You know what I mean? I filed a lawsuit because I was like, you can't have it both ways. You've cleared the law, you cleared the police officers. You're not going to interview anybody. You can't say the investigation's still open. I'm not going to play that game with you. So
I got you.
Hmm.
So basically, if I'm reading you right, you're saying that the case is closed. They're just saying it's open.
Well, now they're saying after I filed the lawsuit and we're about to go to court, all of a sudden, the investigation was closed.
Right.
All of a sudden, the investigation was closed. You can conclude two and two. And
Right.
and by the way, everybody is saying, well, the DA said, they were repeatedly stabbed in the neck or whatever the case may be, the head and neck. This officer has no scratch marks on him at all. Zero. No injuries, nothing. And the only two people that who said this? Oh, this is the same one before.
Is that
Did
the
he
same
put
one? Okay.
yeah. The only two people in the room, well, there's two people, there was three people in it. My brother was across the hall.
Yeah.
The two people who have told the DA this story were the two cops involved. There's not like an unbiased third party who was there and said, well, this might have happened, that might have happened. And quite frankly, if you take a close look at what my other brother heard, which is undisputed, he heard the officer say, stop resisting. And I've talked to other police officers and I was like, well, what does that mean? First of all, it definitely doesn't mean somebody's trying to stab you and kill you, right? That's not what it means. And it usually means the police officer is being aggressive and the other person is not being non-compliant with their being aggressive. But the
So
aggressor is, go ahead.
no one heard a police officer say, "Put the knife down."
My brother across the hall never heard anything about a knife.
Would you assume that would be a command if somebody picked up
I
a
would
knife?
assume that. Any rational person would assume that. Stop trying to stab me. Stop trying to kill me. Put the knife down. Something related to a knife. The only statement was stop resisting.
Okay.
So, and immediately fired two shots. Now, like I said, I know more information than I'm allowed to tell everybody, so I have to be sort of careful
Yeah.
about some of the
Yeah.
things. But the story the DA told the night of the incident is what happened, in my opinion.
All right. Well, I mean,
So,
people been like they wanted to hear something, and you, we have been. I'll just to clear the air with everyone that we are. I only met you through this case, and I did know that you were going to release an email, which you released last week, right? That letter you released, not an email, that
about
letter.
the relationships between Mr.
Right,
Quinn,
right, right,
the
right.
Quinn's son, and the his sister working in DA's office.
Yeah,
Yes, that
I
came
had
out last
seen
week.
that. Yeah, right. So I mean,
Yeah.
and we have talked a couple of times, and I told you that I would like to bring you on the show and stuff like that, right? So nobody thinks that we're
Yeah.
buddies from the old days, because
Oh,
stories can run cuckoo.
do people think that?
Well,
Do people
this is
think?
Fall River, This is Fall River.
I've never met you. I've never spoken to you. Didn't know you before my brother passed away, and I forget how I came into contact with you, but it might have been in the last couple of months. It was
Right,
the first
right.
time I've ever sort of
Right.
made.
I think to be honest with you, I think I sent you a message that I would like to interview you after, and when I heard who you were, and someone said, "Why don't you reach out to him?" And I believe I reached out to you, and you got back to me. We talked on the phone, and then
Yeah,
we
that's the
right.
extent of our that's the extent of our relationship,
Well,
so to
people
speak.
will say different things, believe me. But all right, I'm glad I brought you on. And do you know? Are you going back to court again for like a next date for an update?
June 22nd is the next court date. I hope that we are almost 2 months out from then. I expect that I will get some information from the DA's office
Yeah.
before the next court date, and the next court date is really to see if there are any issues we can't agree on in terms of what they're supposed to produce, and that those issues will be decided by judge.
At that point.
That's
So
my.
from now to June, it's a waiting game to see if and when and what you get.
I anticipate getting something. I don't anticipate getting everything I want, but that's the way the world works.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
All right. Well, then what we'll do is I'll touch base with you now and then when the time is appropriate, we will bring you into the studio and we'll do a full-blown show with phone calls so you can answer questions.
Okay.
All right.
Happy to answer them. All right. Thank you.
All right. And I thank
Yep.
you for coming
Been a
on.
pleasure.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
See you later. Have a good one.